I never thought I'd become the villain in my own grandchild's life story. But here I am, the grandmother who wasn't allowed at Liam's 5th birthday party. The grandmother who made a single phone call that turned everything upside down. Let me tell you how quickly a family can unravel when you discover the person your son married isn't who they pretended to be, and how far a grandmother will go to protect what matters most. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. It's a special kind of heartbreak watching your only grandchild slowly being pulled away from you, seeing the distance grow in those innocent eyes that once lit up at your arrival. But before I take you deeper into this story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And if this resonates with you at all, make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow I'm sharing something that might just give hope to other grandparents facing similar battles. I'm Margaret Holloway, 68 years old with silver hair I've earned through decades of life's lessons. I've spent 40 years building Holloway Financial Services into the most respected mortgage brokerage in Oakridge County. I raised my son Elliott as a single mother after my husband Daniel passed when Elliott was just 14, and somehow managed to keep my head high through it all. My grandson Liam is the reason I'm sharing this painful journey. Liam, bright, curious, with a laugh that could melt the coldest heart. The joy of my life since the day he was born. The trouble began 3 years ago, though I didn't recognize it then. Elliott had been married to Vanessa for nearly 7 years. They seemed happy enough in their colonial-style home in the Willow Creek neighborhood, the home I helped them purchase through a private mortgage arrangement when they were struggling to get approved through traditional banks. Vanessa had always been polite but distant with me. I chalked it up to different personalities. She was meticulous, status-conscious, always concerned with appearances. I was more interested in substance than style. But we made it work because we shared one important thing: love for Elliott and, later, for Liam. The first substantial crack appeared when Liam started preschool. I'd been caring for him 2 days a week since he was born while Elliott and Vanessa worked. We had a routine: library visits on Tuesdays, park adventures on Thursdays, baking cookies that never quite turned out right, but always tasted like love. Liam and I had our own special language, inside jokes, little traditions that were just ours. We've enrolled Liam in the full-time program at Brightwood Academy, Vanessa announced over dinner one evening, not even looking up from her plate. It's the best preschool in the county. Their waiting list is usually years long, but my client sits on their board. Vanessa worked in luxury real estate, catering to the wealthiest families in Oakridge County. Her connections were a point of fierce pride. Full-time? I repeated, my fork pausing halfway to my mouth. But what about our Tuesdays and Thursdays? Mom, it's an amazing opportunity, Elliott interjected, his eyes silently pleading with me to understand. They have Spanish immersion, early coding classes, even a children's yoga program. Of course, I said, forcing a smile for Liam's benefit as he built a mashed potato mountain beside me, oblivious to the conversation's significance. That sounds wonderful. Later, in the kitchen as I helped clear dishes, I asked Elliott privately if this had been a joint decision. His hesitation told me everything. Vanessa feels it's important for Liam's development, he said finally. And you know, Mom, you've done so much already. You deserve some time to yourself. I didn't want time to myself. I wanted those precious mornings when Liam would climb into my lap with a picture book, his small head tucked under my chin, smelling of baby shampoo and innocence. But I did what grandmothers do. I stepped back, adjusted, found new ways to remain present in Liam's life without overstepping the increasingly narrow boundaries Vanessa was establishing. I attended every school performance, brought appropriate gifts on birthdays and holidays. Never too extravagant, never too simple, walking the tightrope of Vanessa's unspoken expectations. and kept my opinions to myself when Liam's schedule became packed with enrichment activities that left little room for simply being a child. The restricted access continued so gradually I barely noticed the pattern forming. Sunday family dinners became monthly, then whenever their schedule permitted. My offers to babysit were met with, "We've already arranged for Kayla from Vanessa's office to watch him," or "He has a play date scheduled with the Thornberry twins." When I did see Liam, Vanessa was always present, hovering, monitoring our interactions with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. I learned to measure my words carefully, to suppress the spontaneous affection that came naturally with my grandson. Even the cookies I baked, Liam's favorites with the chocolate chunks and sea salt, were accepted with comments about sugar content and the importance of teaching healthy relationships with food. Still, we managed. I found small ways to maintain our connection. I asked about his interests, listened intently to his elaborate stories about dinosaurs and robots, remembered the names of every friend he mentioned. I was determined to remain a steady, loving presence in his life, even as the terms of that presence were increasingly dictated by Vanessa. Then came Liam's 5th birthday, the day everything changed. "We're having a space-themed party at the Constellation Play Center," Elliott told me over the phone, excitement in his voice. "Liam's obsessed with astronauts lately. You should see his room. We've covered the ceiling with glow-in-the-dark stars." "That sounds perfect," I said, already thinking of the telescope I'd carefully selected months ago, sitting wrapped in my guest room closet. "What time should I arrive? Do you need help setting up?" The pause that followed stretched uncomfortably. "Long about that, Mom." Elliott's voice dropped. "Vanessa thinks it's best to keep the party small this year. Just kids from his class and their parents. You know how overwhelming these things can get." The weight of what he wasn't saying settled heavy in my chest. "Elliott, are you telling me I'm not invited to my only grandchild's birthday?" "It's not like that," he said quickly, unconvincingly. "We'll do a special family dinner the weekend after. Something small, just the 4 of us. It'll be more meaningful that way, without all the chaos of a kid's party." I said nothing, the silence speaking volumes. "Mom, please understand. It's complicated." "What's complicated about a grandmother attending her grandson's birthday?" I asked, my voice steady despite the hurt coursing through me. "Has Vanessa's mother been excluded as well?" Another telling pause. "Her parents are helping coordinate the party." Of course they were. I ended the call soon after, promising to drop Liam's gift by the house the following week. As I sat in my suddenly too quiet living room, surrounded by photos of a family that felt increasingly distant, something inside me hardened. A lifetime of accommodating, of stepping back, of respecting boundaries that only seemed to move further, away. And for what? To be excluded from one of the most important days in my grandson's young life. To be treated as an outsider, an afterthought, while Vanessa's parents took center stage. That's when I remembered the mortgage paperwork filed neatly in my home office. The private loan arrangement that had made their picture-perfect life in Willow Creek possible, when banks had turned them away due to Elliott's then-struggling architecture business. The papers that listed me not just as the broker, but as the actual holder of their mortgage. I never imagined I'd use financial leverage against my own family. But as I pulled the file from my cabinet that evening, hands steady despite the storm brewing inside me, I realized I'd reached my breaking point. If Vanessa wanted to play power games, she was about to learn she had chosen the wrong opponent. Sometimes, being cast as the villain is the price you pay for fighting to remain in your grandchild's story at all. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I'm Margaret Holloway, 68 years old with silver hair and a spine that's even stiffer after decades running my own business. When people in Oakridge County hear my name, they think of Holloway Financial Services, the mortgage brokerage I built from nothing after Daniel died, leaving me with 14-year-old Elliott and mountains of medical debt. We Holloways are resilient. By necessity. I put myself through financial certification courses at night while working as a bank teller during the day, expanded from mortgage advising to actually funding private loans when I spotted an underserved market during the housing crisis of 2008. Built a reputation for fair terms and professional discretion that attracted clients from 3 counties. Through it all, Elliott was my pride and joy. A gentle boy who grew into a thoughtful man with his father's artistic eye and my pragmatic outlook. He showed an early talent for architecture. I still have the intricate buildings he would construct from whatever materials he could find, preserved in my home office alongside his professional awards. When Elliott met Vanessa Collins during his final year of architecture school, I was cautiously optimistic. She was striking, tall, immaculately groomed, with the kind of confidence that enters a room before she does. She was studying business, marketing, and already had connections through her parents in the local real estate world. "She's ambitious, Mom," Elliott told me, his eyes bright with the particular shine of new love. "You should hear her talk about the luxury developments she wants to market someday. She has this whole vision." I recognized that hungry look. I'd seen it in my own mirror during the lean years when I was building my business. But where my ambition had been born of necessity, a single mother determined to provide stability, Vanessa's seemed to come from a different place. One I couldn't quite name but felt uneasy about nonetheless. Still, who was I to judge? Elliott was happy. They complemented each other in many ways, his creative vision balanced by her practical market sense, her social confidence offsetting his natural reserve. When they married 2 years later in a lavish ceremony mostly funded by her parents, I gave my blessing and a substantial check, telling myself that mothers-in-law were supposed to step back. Give the new couple room to establish themselves. The problems began subtly, as they often do. First, it was the house. A beautiful colonial revival in Willow Creek with a price tag that raised my professional eyebrows given Elliott's entry-level position at the architectural firm and Vanessa's commission-based income selling mid-range properties. "We can make it work," Elliott assured me when I gently inquired about their budget. "Vanessa's lined up some promising luxury listings, and the firm has hinted at a promotion for me within the year." "Have you been pre-approved by a lender?" I asked, unable to turn off my professional instincts. His hesitation answered before his words did. "We've had a few challenges with the traditional approval process. My student loans and Vanessa's credit score from that business venture that didn't work out, but we'll figure it out." I saw the disappointment in his eyes, the fear of losing. Their dream home, the perfect place to start the family they both wanted. Before I could reconsider, I heard myself say, "I could arrange private financing through my company." The relief on his face was worth the immediate second thoughts I had about mixing business with family. We set up a proper mortgage, slightly below market interest rate, but otherwise standard terms with appropriate documentation. I insisted on everything being official and above board. "You're saving us, Mom," Elliott said after the closing, as we stood in the empty living room with its gleaming hardwood floors and graceful archways. "I promise we'll make you proud." For the first few years, everything seemed fine. Elliott's career flourished as his sustainable design approach gained recognition. Vanessa gradually built a clientele among the county's upper echelon, though her commission checks remained unpredictable. They made their mortgage payments on time, occasionally, a few days late with profuse apologies that I always waved away. Then came the joyous news. They were expecting a baby. I still remember Elliott's face when he told me, a mixture of terror and elation that reminded me so much of Daniel when we had learned about our own miracle. I immediately began preparing, converting my home office's adjoining room into a nursery, for visits, researching the safest car seats and cribs, signing up for grandparenting classes at the community center. Perhaps I was too enthusiastic, too present. Vanessa's pregnancy was difficult, severe morning sickness throughout the first trimester, then concerning blood pressure readings that led to partial bed rest in the third. I offered to help however I could, bringing meals, handling light, housekeeping, driving Vanessa to appointments when Elliott couldn't get away from work. My offers were accepted with increasing reluctance. "My mother is coming next week," Vanessa would say, or "We've hired a service," or "The doctor says I need absolute quiet." The pattern was set before I recognized it. My role was being systematically minimized, my involvement redirected or refused. When Liam Daniel Holloway finally arrived after 36 hours of labor, I sat in the hospital waiting room the entire time, only to be told I could have a brief, 10-minute visit once they were settled in the recovery room. Vanessa's parents, by contrast, were present for the delivery and spent hours with the new family afterward. I swallowed my hurt and focused on the miracle of my grandson, this perfect tiny being with Elliott's thoughtful eyes and a dusting of Vanessa's auburn hair. I held him with practiced ease, memories of Elliott's infancy rushing back as Liam's newborn scent imprinted itself on my heart. "You're a natural," the nurse commented as she checked Vanessa's vitals. "She's had plenty of practice," Vanessa replied, her voice light but her eyes watchful. "Though childcare has changed quite a bit in the last 30 years. "Some things never change," I said, carefully keeping my tone neutral as I reluctantly handed Liam back to her. "A baby still needs love, patience, and a good burping after feeds." A flicker of annoyance crossed Vanessa's face, so brief I might have imagined it. As Liam grew from newborn to infant to toddler, I found moments to forge a relationship with him, babysitting when both parents were working, though these opportunities dwindled as Vanessa increasingly arranged for her college-age sister or her mother to cover childcare needs. Sunday dinners at my house, which became less frequent as Liam got older, and holiday gatherings, which always seemed to involve complicated negotiations about timing and duration. Through it all, I maintained my role as their mortgage holder, a fact that rarely came up in conversation except during tax season or when a home repair required discussion of their escrow account. I considered it a gift of security I could provide, a foundation for the family I loved. I never imagined it as leverage, but as I sat in my living room that evening after being explicitly uninvited from Liam's 5th birthday party, something shifted within me. The constant accommodation, the steady retreat, the acceptance of scraps, of time with my only grandchild. Where had it gotten me? On the outside looking in, watching another woman's parents take the role that should have been shared with me. I reached for my phone and scrolled to Elliott's number, then hesitated. My son was caught between his wife and his mother, a position I had tried never to put him in. Speaking to him directly would only force him to choose sides more explicitly. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the Holloway Financial Services client database, mortgage, E8675V, Holloway Collins residence, Willow Creek Estates. With a few clicks, I could see their entire payment history, the current principal balance, and the terms of our agreement, including the clause about the annual property inspection that I had never once enforced. I picked up my phone again, this time dialing my office. "Janet," I said when my assistant answered, "please prepare the standard notice for the annual inspection on the Holloway Collins property." "Yes, my son's home. It's been—" I paused to check the records. Nearly 5 years since the initial assessment. "Schedule it for next Thursday afternoon." Thursday, the day of Liam's birthday party at the Constellation Play Center. As I hung up, I felt a strange mixture of resolve and regret. This wasn't how I wanted things to be. But after years of being slowly edged out of my grandson's life, of watching Vanessa construct a narrative where I was increasingly irrelevant, something had to change. The inspection notice would be the first move in a game I never wanted to play, but one I apparently needed to learn. The inspection notice was delivered by courier the following morning. Official Holloway Financial Services letterhead, formal language about routine evaluation of property condition as per Section 12B of the mortgage agreement, and the specifically scheduled date and time. Thursday, 2:00 p.m. I knew Elliott would be at work, presenting a sustainable housing project to the City Council. I knew Vanessa would be finalizing preparations for Liam's party, scheduled for 4:00 p.m. at the Constellation Play Center. I knew exactly what I was doing. 3 hours after the courier confirmed delivery, my phone rang. Vanessa's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring twice more before answering, my voice professional and calm. Margaret Holloway speaking. Margaret. Her tone was tightly controlled, but I could hear the tension vibrating beneath it. I've just received some kind of inspection notice for our house. There must be a mistake. No mistake, I replied, shuffling papers on my desk, though I was actually sitting in my garden. It's a standard condition of your mortgage agreement, periodic inspections to ensure the property is being properly maintained. We typically do them annually, but given our personal connection, I've been remiss in my professional obligations. A beat of silence. And it has to be this Thursday? At that specific time? I'm afraid so. Our inspector, Mr. Daniels, has a full schedule for the next several weeks. This was the only opening. I paused. Is there a problem with Thursday? Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear her calculating, weighing options. It's Liam's birthday party, she finally said, the words clipped. As you know. Oh? I feigned surprise. I thought the family celebration was next weekend. Elliott mentioned something about a children's party, but I assumed that was for his school friends since I wasn't included in the plans. The sharpness of my last words hung in the air between us. I hadn't intended to be quite so direct, but years of accumulated hurt had slipped through my carefully constructed composure. Margaret. Her voice had changed, softened into the conciliatory tone she used when navigating socially delicate situations with her clients. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We wanted to keep the children's party manageable. 20 kindergartners is already overwhelming. We're having a small family. Dinner on Sunday specifically, so you can celebrate with Liam in a more meaningful way. How thoughtful, I replied, matching her tone. Unfortunately, the inspection is non-negotiable. Regulatory requirements, you understand. But it shouldn't take more than an hour or so, assuming there are no significant issues with the property. Can't. You send someone else? Surely, as the owner of the company, you can delegate this. I'm handling this one personally, given the relationship. I'd think you'd prefer that. Family, keeping things discreet. Professional. Vanessa's sigh was barely audible. I'll need to discuss this with Elliott. Of course, I agreed pleasantly. Though as I mentioned, he has that presentation Thursday afternoon. I wouldn't want him distracted by this minor business matter when he's focusing on such an important opportunity for his career. The manipulation was transparent, even to me. I wasn't proud of it, but 5 years of watching Vanessa's subtle maneuvering had taught me a few tactics of my own. Fine, she conceded. Thursday at 2. Please try to be efficient. Always, I promised, and ended the call. I sat in my garden afterward, watching bees move methodically among the lavender blooms, feeling strangely hollow despite getting exactly what I wanted, guaranteed access to my grandson on his birthday. The tactics left a bitter taste. This wasn't who I had ever wanted to be. Daniel would have been disappointed in me, using business leverage against family. But then, Daniel had never experienced the particular pain of being systematically separated from his only grandchild. My phone rang again less than an hour later. Elliott this time. Mom? His voice held confusion, concern. What's going on with this inspection? Vanessa's upset. I softened instinctively at my son's distress. It's just a routine requirement of the mortgage, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about. After 5 years? And on Liam's birthday of all days? The inspection is at 2, the party's at 4. There won't be any conflict. I kept my tone matter of fact, reasonable. It's not about timing, Mom. It's about... He trailed off, searching for words. It feels deliberate, like you're making some kind of point. My son knew me too well. What point would that be, Elliott? His sigh was heavy with the weight of a conflict he'd been avoiding for years. About not being invited to the party. Look, I wanted you there, but Vanessa felt... What exactly did Vanessa feel, Elliott? I interrupted, unable to maintain my composure any longer. That a grandmother's presence would somehow ruin her carefully orchestrated event? That I wouldn't fit with the image she's trying to project to the other parents? Or is it simply that she's been steadily minimizing my role in Liam's life since the day he was born, and this was just the next logical step? Silence stretched between us. When Elliott spoke again, his voice was quiet, pained. It's complicated, Mom. 3 words that explained nothing and everything. I know it is, I said, gentler now. You're caught in the middle, and that's never been my intention. But this isn't about the party. Not really. It's about the pattern. It's about watching my only grandchild grow up from a distance because your wife has decided I don't fit into the picture she's creating. That's not fair, he protested, but weakly. Isn't it? When was the last time I had Liam for an afternoon without supervision? When was the last time I was invited to one of his school events? Why is it that Vanessa's parents are fixtures in his life while I'm treated like an occasional visitor? More silence. I could hear Elliott's breathing, slightly ragged. The inspection will be professional and brief, I continued, softening my approach. And afterward, I'll give Liam his birthday present. The telescope I picked out months ago, that's been wrapped and waiting in my guest room closet. Then I'll leave before the party guests arrive. Mom, I love you, Elliott. I've respected your marriage and your parenting choices, even when they've hurt me. I've stepped back and stayed quiet and made myself small to keep the peace. But I won't be erased from my grandson's life. I can't. After we hung up, I sat motionless in my garden until the light began to fade. The righteous anger that had propelled my scheme was giving way to uncertainty. Was I fighting for my place in Liam's life, or simply retaliating for years of accumulated slights? Was I protecting our relationship, or damaging it irreparably? I didn't have answers, only the conviction that I couldn't continue as things were, showing up when permitted, accepting crumbs of time with Liam, watching another woman's parents claim the role that should have been shared. Thursday would change things, one way or another. I just wasn't certain anymore whether it would be for better or worse. The morning of Liam's birthday dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through my bedroom windows despite my restless night. I dressed with particular care, a blue cashmere, sweater that Liam once said made my eyes look like the ocean gamma, tailored gray slacks, subtle jewelry, professional but approachable. The mortgage inspector, who also happened to be a grandmother with a carefully wrapped telescope in her trunk. I arrived at the Willow Creek house at precisely 1:55 p.m., parking my sensible Volvo behind Vanessa's gleaming white Range Rover in the circular driveway. The front garden was immaculate, as I expected. Vanessa employed the neighborhood's most exclusive landscaping service. Blue and silver balloons were already tied to the mailbox, announcing the day's significance to passing neighbors. Before I could reach the front door, it swung open. Vanessa stood in the entryway, impeccable in a sage green sheath dress, despite the pre-party chaos that must have been underway. Her smile was fixed, professional, the same one she used in her real estate marketing photos. "Margaret," she greeted me with cool politeness. "Right on time." "Punctuality is a virtue in both business and family matters," I replied, equally pleasant. "Shall we begin? I know you have a schedule to keep." She stepped back to let me enter, her posture rigid. The foyer was lined with wrapped gifts and party Supplies, streamers and cosmic patterns, paper plates featuring cartoon astronauts, gift bags I assumed were for party guests. "Where's the birthday boy?" I asked, setting my inspection folder on the console table. "Napping," Vanessa replied quickly. The party excitement was overwhelming him, so I put him down for a half hour to recharge. Best not to disturb him. I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. Of course Liam would be conveniently unavailable during my visit. Let's proceed with the inspection then. We'll start with the structural elements, foundation, roof, major systems, and then review any renovations or improvements you've made since purchase. The inspection was proceeding with excruciating professionalism. I noted the updated kitchen appliances, the tasteful crown molding in the living room, the recently refinished hardwood floors. I documented the new water heater installed last winter, the energy-efficient windows that had replaced the originals, the carefully maintained HVAC system. Vanessa followed 2 steps behind me, answering questions with clipped precision, her phone constantly buzzing with party-related messages. Her tension was palpable, though her composure never cracked, a skill honed through years of showing million-dollar properties to demanding clients. "The master bathroom renovation is lovely," I commented as we examined the marble tile shower. "And double vanity. Quite high-end finishes." "We believe in investing in the property," Vanessa replied. "Quality materials maintain their value. Always the realtor, even in her own home." We moved methodically through the upstairs bedrooms, the guest room decorated in neutral tones, the home office they shared with dual desks, and finally approaching Liam's room. "He's still sleeping," Vanessa said quickly, positioning herself between me and the astronaut-themed door with its hand-painted nameplate. "We can skip this room." I consulted my clipboard. The inspection requires documentation of all living spaces, including any structural or electrical modifications. Has his room been significantly altered since purchase? A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. We converted it from a basic bedroom to a child's room, added bookshelves, a reading nook, the usual. "Then I'll need to document those changes," I insisted gently. "I'll be very quiet." Before she could object further, the door creaked open from within. Liam stood there in rocket ship pajamas, his auburn hair tousled from sleep, his eyes brightening instantly when he saw me. "Gamma!" he exclaimed, launching himself at my legs with the uninhibited affection that only children can offer. "You came to my birthday!" I knelt to his level, enveloping him in a hug that felt like coming home. He smelled of sleep warmth and the faint grape scent of the children's shampoo Vanessa preferred. "Of course I did, Starman. I wouldn't miss it for the world." "Did you see my space party stuff? I'm going to be an astronaut on the moon, and there's a real telescope coming to see planets, and a rocket cake with 5 candles 'cause I'm 5 whole years now." His words tumbled over each other with excitement. "That sounds absolutely wonderful," I said, aware of Vanessa hovering anxiously nearby. "Would you show me your room? I've heard it's got stars on the ceiling." He grabbed my hand and pulled me inside, eager to display his domain. The room was indeed spectacular. Midnight blue walls dotted with meticulously painted constellations, a bed shaped like a space capsule, bookshelves filled with science books and astronomy guides alongside age-appropriate stories. "Daddy painted all the stars right," Liam informed me proudly. "He used a real star map and everything. And that's the Big Dipper. And that's Orion's belt. And that's—" "Liam," Vanessa interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. "Gamma is here for a house inspection. She has work to do before your party." His face fell momentarily before brightening again. "Are you coming to my party too, Gamma?" The innocent question hung in the air between us. I glanced at Vanessa, whose expression had frozen into a tight smile. "Gamma has other plans today," she said before I could respond. "But remember, we're having a special family dinner on Sunday just for her." Liam's brow furrowed in confusion. "But today's my actual birthday, and Gamma is my actual family." Out of the mouths of babes. My heart swelled with vindication and broke simultaneously at the bewilderment in his voice. "I brought your present today," I said, carefully keeping my tone light. "It's in my car. Perhaps after I finish the inspection, you could help me bring it in?" "Yes!" He jumped excitedly. "Is it big? Is it wrapped? Is it a space thing?" "Liam," Vanessa interjected again, "you need to get dressed for your party. The guests will be arriving at the play center in less than 2 hours. But Gamma will finish her work while you get ready," she continued smoothly. "Come on, I've laid out your special astronaut outfit." She guided him toward his adjoining bathroom, throwing me a pointed look over her shoulder. "We'll just be a few minutes. Perhaps you could continue with the hall closets?" I nodded, recognizing the strategic retreat for what it was. As they disappeared into the bathroom, I heard Liam's confused whisper, "But why can't Gamma come to my space party? Grandma and Grandpa Collins are coming." Vanessa's response was too quiet to make out. I documented Liam's room quickly: the built-in bookshelves, the reading nook with its telescope-shaped light fixture, the custom ceiling, and moved on to the hall closets as suggested. My inspection routine had become mechanical, my thoughts entirely occupied with Liam's innocent question and the look on his face when Vanessa deflected. He didn't understand the arbitrary boundaries his mother had established. In his 5-year-old mind, there was a simple truth. I was his grandmother. It was his birthday. Therefore, I should be at his party. The adult complications, the power struggles and unspoken resentments, were incomprehensible to him. 20 minutes later, as I examined the finished basement that had been converted into a stylish media room, Liam bounded down the stairs, now dressed in a miniature NASA flight suit complete with patches and name badge. "Gamma, look! I'm a real astronaut!" He spun in a circle, showcasing his outfit. "The party place has a moon bounce and a rocket ship slide." "You look absolutely stellar," I told him, setting aside my clipboard to give him my full attention. "Commander Liam, ready for liftoff." He beamed at me, then lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Mommy says you can't come to my party because there's only room for kids and their parents. But you could pretend to be my other mommy. I won't tell." My throat tightened. "That's very sweet of you, Starman, but I think we should follow your mommy's party plan. I wouldn't want to cause any trouble on your special day." His face fell slightly, but he nodded with the peculiar solemnity children sometimes display when trying to understand adult rules. "Okay, but you can stay till I go to the party, right? And give me my present?" "Absolutely," I promised, winking at him. "It's a very special present that needs assembly. Perhaps we could work on it together on Sunday when you come for our family dinner?" "Yes," he jumped excitedly. "Can we set it up in your backyard? Can I have strawberry ice cream too? Mommy doesn't buy it because of the red dye, but you always have some at your house." "Strawberry ice cream is officially on the menu," I confirmed, deliberately not looking toward the stairs where I could sense Vanessa's presence. "Now shall we go get your present from my car?" As Liam raced up the stairs, I gathered my inspection notes and followed more slowly. The formal part of my visit was nearly complete, but the real purpose, ensuring my place in my grandson's birthday, had only partially succeeded. I wouldn't be at the party, but at least I'd had these precious moments with him, had seen his excitement, had secured a promise of Sunday dinner that would be harder for Vanessa to reschedule now that Liam was anticipating it. It wasn't a complete victory, but perhaps it was enough for today. In the foyer, Vanessa was checking items off a party preparation list while Liam bounced impatiently by the front door. "Can I go with Gamma to get my present now? Please, please, please." 5 minutes, Vanessa conceded with a glance at her watch. "We need to leave for the play center by 3:30 to set up before guests arrive." Liam grabbed my hand and pulled me outside toward my car, chattering about planets and stars and how he was going to be the first astronaut to find aliens, but friendly ones who would want to play catch and eat pizza. As I opened my trunk and revealed the large, carefully wrapped package with its shimmering paper covered in constellations. His eyes widened to perfect circles. "Whoa, it's huge," he breathed, reaching out to touch the paper reverently. "What is it?" "You'll have to open it to find out," I teased, lifting the package. "Can you help me carry it inside?" He nodded solemnly, placing his small hands under one end of the box while I supported most of the weight. Together, we carried it into the house, his face a picture of concentration and excitement. In the living room, he tore into the paper with the unbridled enthusiasm of childhood, gasping when the telescope box was revealed. "A real star looker, just like real scientists use. It's a beginner telescope," I explained, kneeling beside him to show him the features on the box. "Perfect for young astronomers. It comes with star charts and a special moon map. Can we set it up right now?" he asked, already trying to open the box. Vanessa stepped forward. "Not now, sweetheart. We need to leave for your party very soon. Maybe Daddy can help you with it this weekend. But I want to use it tonight. The stars only." "Come out at night!" His lower lip began to tremble, the precarious emotion of a child stretched between excitement and disappointment. "The stars will still be there on Sunday," Vanessa assured him, her tone gentle but firm. "Now, why don't you thank Gamma for your wonderful present?" Liam threw his arms around my neck, nearly knocking me off balance. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's the best present ever. I'm gonna see aliens and meteorites and black holes and everything." I hugged him back fiercely, memorizing the feeling of his small body against mine, his heart beating quick with excitement. "You're so welcome, Starman. We'll have a proper stargazing session very soon." "Promise?" he asked, pulling back to look me in the eyes with sudden seriousness. "Cross my heart," I replied, making the gesture that had sealed pacts between Elliott and me decades ago, and now bound me to his son. Vanessa cleared her throat. "Liam, please go brush your teeth and use the bathroom before we leave. We won't have time to come back home before the party." With a final squeeze, he released me and raced upstairs, leaving Vanessa and me alone in a silence heavy with unspoken tensions. "The telescope is excessive," she said finally. "We've already discussed appropriate gift limits for birthdays." I met her gaze steadily. "It's educational, and it's from a grandmother to her only grandchild on a milestone birthday." "It's a boundary issue," she countered. "Like this inspection on today of all days." "Boundaries work both ways, Vanessa. You've been establishing them quite effectively for years. Perhaps it's time we discussed where exactly those lines should be drawn." Vanessa's eyes narrowed at my words. The pleasant mask she maintained for clients and casual acquaintances slipped momentarily, revealing the steel beneath. "This isn't the time or place for that discussion," she said, voice lowered as she glanced toward the stairs. "Liam's excited about his party. I won't have it ruined by family drama." "Is that what I am now?" "Family drama?" I kept my tone even, though my heart pounded. 5 years ago, I was the supportive mother-in-law who provided the mortgage that made this house possible. The grandmother who rearranged her office to create a nursery. The reliable babysitter who never canceled, even when work emergencies arose. She crossed her arms, defensive but composed. People change. Relationships evolve. Liam's needs have nothing to do with your systematic campaign to minimize my role in his life, I finished for her. Let's be honest with each other, just this once. This isn't about Liam's needs. It's about your vision of the perfect family that somehow doesn't include meaningful involvement from your husband's mother. A flush crept up her neck. You've always been critical of my parenting, always hovering, suggesting better ways to do things, undermining my authority with Liam. Offering occasional grandmotherly advice is hardly undermining, I countered, and I've stepped back and respected your boundaries far more than most would in my position. By scheduling a mortgage inspection on his birthday, by bringing an outrageously expensive gift after we specifically discussed keeping presents modest, Her voice rose slightly before she caught herself. That's not respecting boundaries. That's deliberately challenging them. The truth of her accusations stung, but I held my ground. When reasonable requests are consistently denied, when invitations become increasingly rare, when another set of grandparents is clearly favored, yes, I found a way to ensure I wouldn't be entirely excluded from my grandson's birthday. I'm not proud of the tactic, but I refuse to apologize for wanting to be part of Liam's special day. Footsteps thundered down the stairs as Liam returned, still in his astronaut costume, but now with a small backpack shaped like a rocket strapped to his shoulders. "I'm ready for blast-off," he announced, oblivious to the tension between us. "Gamma, are you sure you can't come? There's gonna be freeze-dried ice cream just like real astronauts eat." Before I could respond, the front door opened, and Elliott walked in, briefcase in hand, his tie slightly askew. His eyes widened in surprise at seeing me. "Mom? I thought the inspection was over by now." "Just wrapping up," I said, forcing a smile. I was giving Liam his birthday present. "A real telescope!" Liam exclaimed, running to his father. "Gamma says we can look at aliens and planets and everything." Elliott set down his briefcase and lifted Liam into a birthday hug. "That sounds amazing, buddy. Did you thank Gamma properly?" "Uh-huh. And we're gonna use it on Sunday when I come for Starberry ice cream." Elliott's eyes met mine over Liam's head, his expression unreadable. "That's right. Sunday dinner at Gamma's house." Vanessa stepped forward. "Elliott, you're home early. How was the presentation?" "It went well, I think. They had fewer questions than I expected." He set Liam down and loosened his tie. "I rushed back to help with party preparations, but it looks like you have everything under control as usual." "We need to leave in 10 minutes, she informed him, checking her watch. "The play center expects us early for setup, and your mother was just finishing her inspection." The emphasis she placed on inspection was subtle, but unmistakable. Elliott glanced between us, clearly sensing the undercurrents. "Liam, why don't you go make sure your space helmet is in your backpack?" Vanessa suggested. "The one Grandpa Collins got you that lights up." Once Liam had dashed back upstairs, Elliott faced us both. "What's really going on here?" "Ask your mother." "About her convenient timing and excessive gift," Vanessa replied, her composure intact but strain evident in her clipped words. "Ask your wife about excluding me from Liam's birthday party while her parents are honored guests," I countered. Elliott ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of his childhood frustration that it momentarily transported me back 20 years. "Can we not do this today? It's Liam's birthday." "Exactly," Vanessa and I said simultaneously, then exchanged tense glances. Elliott sighed heavily. "Mom, I appreciate you coming by to give Liam his gift. He's clearly thrilled with it. But we do need to get to the party venue. The inspection is complete now, right?" The dismissal was gentle but clear. My son, ever the peacekeeper, was asking me to leave. "Yes, it's complete," I confirmed, gathering my clipboard and folder. "Everything appears to be in excellent condition. The property value has almost certainly appreciated since purchase, especially with the renovations you've done." "Good to know," Elliott said, relief evident in his voice at the return to practical matters. "We've tried to make thoughtful improvements." "They show," I assured him, then turned to address them both. "I'll send the official report next week. No issues that would affect your mortgage terms." Vanessa nodded stiffly. "Thank you for your thoroughness." The formal courtesy felt absurd after our heated exchange, but I matched her tone. "Just doing my job." I moved toward the door, then paused. "Could I say goodbye to Liam before I go?" Flash of irritation crossed Vanessa's face, quickly suppressed. "We really need to get going." "Of course you can," Elliott interrupted, calling up the stairs. "Liam, come say goodbye to Gamma." He appeared instantly, as if he'd been waiting just out of sight. "You're leaving already?" I knelt to his level one last time. "Yes, Starman. You have a big adventure ahead at your party, and I have some work to finish." His lower lip protruded slightly. "I wish you could come see the rocket slide." "Me too," I said honestly. "But we'll have our own adventure on Sunday with your new telescope. Deal?" "Deal." He threw his arms around me in another fierce hug. "I'll save you some alien ice cream." "That's very thoughtful," I said, blinking back unexpected tears as I released him. "Happy birthday, Liam. 5 is a very important age. You're halfway to double digits now." He giggled at this mathematical marvel, then was distracted by Vanessa reminding him about his light-up helmet again. As he thundered back upstairs, Elliott walked me to the door. "Mom," he said quietly, "I know today isn't ideal, but Sunday will be better. Just the 4 of us, focused on Liam, no distractions." "I understand," I replied, though I wasn't sure I did anymore. When had simply wanting to celebrate my grandson's birthday become such a contentious issue? When had my presence become a distraction rather than a natural part of family celebrations? "And the telescope is wonderful," he added. "A bit advanced for him now, but something he can grow into. Dad would have approved." The mention of Daniel, who had never had the chance to be a grandfather but would have been a magnificent one, tightened my throat. He always said children rise to meet high expectations. Elliott smiled, a genuine expression that momentarily erased the tension lines around his eyes. "I remember. Give them space tools, not toys," he used to say. Exactly. For a brief moment, we were connected again in the memory of the man we'd both loved, the family we'd once been. The moment shattered as Vanessa called from inside. "Elliott, we need to leave in 5 minutes." He squeezed my arm gently. "Sunday. It'll be good." I nodded and walked to my car, maintaining my composure until I was safely inside with the doors locked. Then I allowed myself a moment of pure, unfiltered emotion, anger, hurt, frustration, and beneath it all, fear. Fear that despite my financial leverage, despite my determined efforts, I was still losing the battle for a meaningful place in my grandson's life. The mortgage inspection had gotten me in the door, had secured those precious minutes with Liam, but it hadn't fundamentally changed anything. Vanessa still controlled access to my grandson. My son still stood in the middle, trying to keep peace rather than address the underlying problem. As I started the car, I caught sight of them emerging from the house, the picture-perfect family in their carefully coordinated outfits, Liam bouncing. With excitement between his parents, all 3 loading into Vanessa's gleaming SUV for the drive to the celebration I wasn't permitted to attend. The telescope I'd given Liam remained in the house, unassembled, overshadowed by the immediate excitement of the party. A promise of future connection rather than present inclusion. It wasn't enough. Not anymore. As I pulled away from the curb, a new resolve hardened within me. The mortgage had been my first leverage point, but I had others. Resources, connections, influence in the community they valued so highly. If today had shown me anything, it was that polite acquiescence had gotten me nowhere. 5 years of gracious retreat had only emboldened Vanessa to push me further from Liam's life. The time for subtle maneuvers was over. If I wanted to secure my place as Liam's grandmother, not just in name, but in meaningful presence, I needed to be willing to fight for it directly, openly, without the pretense of mortgage inspections or coincidental timing. Sunday dinner would be more than a makeup celebration. It would be the beginning of a new approach, one where I would finally speak the unvarnished truth about what I wanted, what Liam deserved, and what kind of family we could be if we addressed the elephant that had been expanding in the room for 5 years. The question was whether my son and his wife were ready to hear it. The 3 days between Liam's birthday and our scheduled Sunday dinner passed with excruciating slowness. I buried myself in work, reviewing mortgage applications and conducting legitimate property inspections, with a focus that my staff noticed but wisely didn't mention. My assistant Janet, who had known me since we opened the business together 30 years ago, simply placed cups of tea on my desk at regular intervals and deflected non-urgent calls. By Sunday morning, I had prepared everything for the dinner with methodical precision. Liam's favorite foods: dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets alongside the adult meal, macaroni and cheese with 3 kinds of cheese, green beans arranged to look like alien tentacles, a trick I'd discovered during one of our earlier visits. The strawberry ice cream was waiting in the freezer, a small candle tucked in a drawer to recreate a mini birthday moment. The telescope remained in its box in the center of the living room, surrounded by the star charts and astronomy guides I'd purchased to supplement it. I'd even ordered a child-sized lab coat with Professor Liam Holloway, space scientist, embroidered on the pocket. Not to compete with the astronaut costume Vanessa had selected, but to expand on his clear enthusiasm for all things celestial. At precisely 4:30 p.m., their car pulled into my driveway. I watched from the window as Elliott helped Liam out of his booster seat, as Vanessa straightened his collar and whispered something in his ear. Last-minute instructions or reminders, perhaps. My stomach tightened with an emotion I couldn't quite name, anticipation mixed with dread, hope tangled with resignation. The doorbell rang, though they'd always simply walked in before. Another small boundary newly erected, another sign of the shifting relationship. I opened the door with a warm smile focused entirely on Liam. "There's my space explorer. How was your birthday party?" "Gamma!" He launched himself at me with unrestrained enthusiasm. "It was awesome. I went down the rocket slide 17 times and there was a moon bounce and I got so many presents and nobody threw up even though we had so much cake." I laughed, hugging him close. "That sounds like the perfect party." "It was," he agreed, then pulled back to look at me earnestly. "But I still wished you could have been there." Over his head, I caught Vanessa's frown and Elliott's warning glance. Dangerous territory already, and they'd barely crossed the threshold. "Well, I'm here now," I said, ushering them inside. "And I think there's a very special space laboratory waiting to be set up in the backyard. But first, dinner is almost ready." "Is it mac and cheese with the 3 cheeses?" Liam asked hopefully, already squirming out of his light jacket. "Of course," I confirmed. "And alien green beans." "Yes." He pumped his fist triumphantly. "Mommy only makes regular green beans. She says food shouldn't be played with." Another flicker of annoyance crossed Vanessa's face as she handed me a bottle of wine. "We appreciate you hosting, Margaret. It smells wonderful." The formality in her tone was jarring. We'd moved from family to dinner guests in the space of a few days. Elliott, sensing the tension, quickly jumped in with questions about work, about my garden, about neutral topics that carried us through the initial awkwardness of settling in. Dinner itself went surprisingly well, primarily because Liam dominated. The conversation with elaborate descriptions of his party, his new toys, and his detailed plans for the telescope. The adults maintained a careful civility, passing dishes and complimenting the food with polite smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. It wasn't until Liam had devoured his special serving of strawberry ice cream, complete with the candle, and a second round of happy birthday, that the real purpose of this gathering surfaced. "Liam, why don't you take your lab coat and check out the backyard?" Elliott suggested. "See if you can find the perfect spot for your telescope. We grown-ups need to talk for a few minutes." Liam looked between us uncertainly. At 5, he was already perceptive enough to sense undercurrents. "It's okay, Starman," I assured him. "The best astronomers always survey their observation sites carefully. Take your time exploring." Once he had reluctantly headed outside, visible through the French doors as he paced the yard with comical seriousness, Elliott cleared his throat. "Mom, we need to talk about Thursday," he began, his architect's hands fidgeting with his napkin. "About the inspection, about the boundaries that were crossed." I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. "Yes, we do. But not just about Thursday. About the past 5 years of increasingly restricted access to my grandson. About being excluded from his birthday while your parents were invited, Vanessa. About the systematic way you've minimized my role in his life. Vanessa's posture stiffened. That's not fair or accurate. You see Liam regularly, on your terms, under your supervision, in carefully controlled environments, I interrupted. When was the last time he stayed overnight with me? When was the last time I was invited to one of his school events? Why do your parents have free access while I'm treated like a potentially dangerous influence? Elliott held up his hands placatingly. Mom, nobody thinks you're a dangerous influence. But there have to be boundaries in any family. Boundaries. That seemed to apply only to me, I pointed out. Not to Vanessa's parents, not to the babysitters you hire, not to the parents of Liam's friends who host him for playdates, just to his paternal grandmother. That's because you don't respect our parenting decisions, Vanessa said, her composure slipping. You undermine me with sugary treats, with exciting gamma adventures that make regular routines seem boring, with excessive gifts that we've specifically asked you to moderate. I respect your role as his mother, I countered, keeping my voice measured despite the anger building inside me. What I don't respect is your apparent determination to push me to the periphery of his life. A telescope for a space-obsessed child is hardly excessive, it's thoughtful. Strawberry ice cream occasionally is a grandmother's prerogative. These aren't capital offenses, Vanessa. They're normal grandparenting moments. Elliott sighed heavily. This isn't productive. We're talking past each other. Then let me be absolutely clear, I said, looking directly at both of them. I love Liam more than I can express. I've respected your authority as his parents, stepped back when asked, accommodated. Increasingly restrictive boundaries for 5 years. But I won't accept being treated as an outsider, a visitor who requires supervision and scheduling weeks in advance for limited, controlled interactions. What exactly are you asking for? Vanessa demanded, arms crossed defensively. Regular, meaningful time with my grandson. Occasional weekends where he stays with me. Inclusion in school events and family celebrations, not just the secondary makeup gatherings after the fact. The same consideration and access that your parents enjoy. Elliott ran a hand through his hair, his discomfort evident. Mom, it's not that simple. Actually, it is, I interrupted. Either I'm Liam's grandmother in practice as well as name, or I'm not. And if I'm not allowed to be, I need to understand why. The directness of my question created a momentary silence. Elliott looked at his wife, who was studying her water glass with unusual intensity. Vanessa? I prompted gently. Why am I kept at arm's length while your parents are embraced as integral parts of Liam's life? She looked up, her expression a complex mixture of defensiveness and something that might have been guilt. You're not like my parents. You're interventionist. You have strong opinions about everything. Bedtimes, screen time, discipline, nutrition. You look at me with that expression when I make parenting choices you disagree with. What expression? I asked, genuinely confused. That one, right there, she said, gesturing toward my face. The slight frown, the pursed lips. I've seen it 1,000 times, when I enrolled Liam in Brightwood instead of letting him stay with you 2 days a week. When I chose his preschool activities. When I limited sugar at his 2nd birthday. You think I don't notice, but I do. I took a deep breath, considering her words. Had I been judgmental without realizing it? Had my concerns about her parenting style been more transparent than I'd intended? I'm sorry if I've made you feel judged, I said finally. That was never my intention. I have opinions, yes, formed from raising Elliott, from my professional experience with families, from research and reading. But I've tried to keep those opinions to myself unless directly asked. You don't have to say anything, she replied. It's in how you interact with Liam, showing him the fun way, the gamma way that implicitly criticizes the structure and rules we've established at home. Elliott nodded reluctantly. Mom, Sometimes it does feel like you're trying to be the good cop while we're the disciplinarians, like you're competing for his affection. The accusation stung precisely because it contained a kernel of truth. Hadn't I deliberately created special traditions with Liam? Hadn't I sometimes thought Vanessa's rules were unnecessarily strict? Hadn't I treasured my role as the place of joy and freedom in his otherwise highly structured life? I understand, I said slowly. And perhaps there's some truth to that. But isn't that the traditional grandparent role? To provide a different kind of relationship, a special place where the rules are a little more relaxed, where there's more room for whimsy and spontaneity? Not when it undermines the parents, Vanessa said firmly. Not when it creates confusion for the child about expectations and boundaries. Outside, Liam was carefully measuring paces between different spots in the yard, completely absorbed in his mission. The sight of him, so earnest, so precious, strengthened my resolve. I hear your concerns, I acknowledged, and I'm willing to be more mindful of the messages I'm sending, to align more closely with your parenting approach. But in return, I need to be treated as a valued member of this family, not as a potential threat to be managed and monitored. Elliott looked relieved at the more conciliatory tone. That sounds reasonable. We can work on this together, find a balance that respects everyone's roles. Vanessa was less convinced, her expression still guarded. What specifically are you asking for? I want a regular schedule, I said, leaning forward slightly. 1 weekend a month where Liam stays with me from Saturday morning until Sunday afternoon. A standing weekly dinner, just Liam and me, perhaps after school on Wednesdays. Inclusion in school events like parent-teacher conferences and performances, and genuine inclusion in family celebrations. Not segregated makeup events after the fact. Vanessa's eyes widened. That's a lot of unsupervised time. The phrase hung in the air between us, revealing more than perhaps she intended. Unsupervised? Time. As if I couldn't be trusted alone with my own grandson. I raised a son who grew into a successful architect, a loving husband, and a wonderful father, I said quietly. I ran a legitimate business that helped countless families, including yours, secure homes. I've never given you any reason to consider me untrustworthy or unsafe with Liam. Elliott shifted uncomfortably. Mom, I don't think that's what Vanessa meant. Then what did she mean? I asked, my gaze still fixed on my daughter-in-law. Why does the thought of Liam spending time alone with me cause such obvious concern? Vanessa set her water glass down with a controlled precision that betrayed her tension. It's not about trust in that sense. It's about consistency. Children thrive on routine, on clear expectations. Every child development expert agrees on this. When Liam spends time in different environments with different rules, it creates confusion. He seems remarkably well-adjusted to me, I observed. Bright, curious, secure in his relationships, hardly a child suffering from occasional flexibility in his routine. You don't see the aftermath, she replied. The difficulty settling back into normal bedtimes after he's been allowed to stay up late with you. The resistance to healthy snacks after he's had ice cream and cookies. The "but Gamma lets me" arguments that follow every visit. I hadn't considered this perspective, the challenges they might face after Liam's time with me. Had I been making their parenting more difficult without realizing it? I can adjust on those fronts, I conceded. Maintain similar routines for bedtime, be more mindful about treats and exceptions. But that doesn't explain the supervised visits, the constant oversight, the reluctance to include me in his regular activities. Elliott cleared his throat. There's something else, Mom, something we haven't really discussed directly. I turned to my son, noting the discomfort in his expression. Go on. You have opinions about Vanessa's parenting choices, strong ones. We both know you think Liam's schedule is too structured, that he has too many enrichment activities and Not enough free play. I've rarely voiced those concerns, I defended. But they're obvious in your interactions, he continued gently. The way you create elaborate imaginative games when he visits. The comments about how children in your day had more independence. The books you give him about wild adventures and breaking rules. Had I been that transparent? That undermining? I thought I'd been careful to keep my reservations to myself, to respect their authority while still providing a different kind of experience for Liam. I see, I said slowly. So my crime is having a different parenting philosophy, one that values spontaneity and creative freedom alongside structure and achievement. It's not a crime, Vanessa said, her tone softening slightly. But it is a conflict, one that puts Liam in the middle of competing value systems. Children navigate different environments all the time, I pointed out. School has different rules than home. Friends' houses have different expectations. Learning to adapt to varying social contexts is an important skill. Within reason, she countered. But the primary attachment figures in a child's life should be aligned on core values and approaches. The implication stung that I wasn't considered a primary attachment figure in Liam's life, merely a peripheral influence to be managed. Elliott, ever the mediator, stepped in again. What if we tried a compromise? A regular schedule as Mom suggested, but with some agreed-upon parameters. Consistent bedtimes, limits on treats, alignment on certain house rules that would apply at both homes. Vanessa considered this, her expression thoughtful but still reserved. And what about the mortgage situation? Because using financial leverage to force access to Liam is completely unacceptable. So we had finally reached the heart of the matter, the mortgage inspection, my one act of rebellion against years of increasing restrictions. That was a single incident born of frustration after being explicitly excluded from his birthday celebration, I acknowledged. Not my proudest moment, I admit. But it came after years of accepting every new limitation, every canceled visit, every rescheduled dinner without complaint. It was manipulative, Vanessa stated flatly. It was desperate, I corrected. The action of a grandmother watching her role in her grandson's life being systematically diminished with no recourse, no discussion, no consideration for what that relationship might mean to either of us. Through the French doors, we could see Liam still exploring the yard, now examining the garden beds with the serious concentration of a scientist cataloging alien flora. The sight of him, so perfect, so precious, softened something in all of us. I don't want to fight about this anymore, I said quietly. I don't want Liam catching glimpses of tension between the adults who love him. I just want to be his grandmother. Not just in name or on holidays, but in the everyday fabric of his life. Elliott reached across the table and took my hand. That's what we all want, Mom. For Liam to be surrounded by people who love him. We just need to find a way to make it work for everyone. Vanessa wasn't quite ready to concede. The mortgage inspection was inappropriate. Using financial leverage in family matters crosses a line that can't be uncrossed. You're right, I admitted, surprising both of them. It was wrong to mix business and family that way. I was hurt and angry about being excluded from his birthday, but that doesn't justify using the mortgage as leverage. My candor seemed to catch Vanessa off guard. Perhaps she'd expected continued justification rather than acknowledgement. What if, Elliott suggested cautiously, we start fresh, clear parameters, regular schedule, open communication about expectations. And Mom, maybe it's time to consider transferring the mortgage to a traditional lender, removing that particular complication from our relationship. The suggestion made practical sense, though it would mean losing my primary connection to their home, the one piece of leverage I'd ever exercised. But perhaps that was necessary, a gesture of good faith, a step toward a healthier dynamic. I would be amenable to that, I said carefully, provided we have a clear agreement about my role in Liam's life moving forward. one that doesn't depend on Vanessa's parents' availability or your work schedules or whether it's convenient in any given week. Outside, Liam had completed his survey of the yard and was now heading back toward the house, his mission accomplished, his face bright with purpose. Our time for adult conversation was coming to an end. Vanessa watched him approach, her expression softening as it always did when she looked at her son. "We can try the Wednesday dinners," she said finally, "and one overnight a month to start, with consistent routines for bedtime and meals." It was less than I'd hoped for, but more than I'd had before. A foundation to build upon rather than the complete restructuring I'd envisioned. "Thank you," I said simply. "I promise to respect your parenting decisions, to reinforce rather than undermine the values you're teaching him." Elliott squeezed my hand gratefully. "And we'll be more inclusive about school events and celebrations. No more separate birthday gatherings." Vanessa nodded, though with visible reluctance. "We can try this arrangement for 3 months and then reassess how it's working for everyone, especially Liam." As Liam burst through the door, face flushed with excitement, our conversation necessarily ended, the serious expressions replaced with smiles and attentive interest in his astronomical, surveying results. "Gamma, I found the perfect spot for the telescope," he announced, pointing emphatically toward the far corner of the yard. "It's the flattest, and there's no trees blocking the sky, and we can see all the stars from there." "That sounds ideal," I agreed, standing to follow him outside. "Shall we set it up now?" He nodded vigorously, already tugging me toward the box containing his gift. Elliott and Vanessa followed, the tension of our discussion temporarily set aside in the face of Liam's enthusiasm. As we assembled the telescope together, Elliott reading instructions, Vanessa helping Liam understand the different parts, me demonstrating how to adjust the focus, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps this fragile truce might hold. That this moment of functioning as a cohesive family unit might be the beginning of a new pattern rather than a temporary exception. The evening concluded more positively than it had begun, with plans made for my first official Wednesday dinner, with Liam that week and his first overnight stay scheduled for the following weekend. As they prepared to leave, Liam hugged me with characteristic ferocity. "Next time I come, can we look at the real planets? Jupiter has storms bigger than the whole Earth." "Absolutely," I promised, catching Vanessa's eye over his head. She gave a small nod, acknowledgement, if not quite approval. It was progress. Imperfect, tenuous progress, but movement in the right direction nonetheless. After they left, I sat, in my garden watching the first stars appear, wondering if Liam would look up at the same sky from his window tonight, if our shared fascination with the cosmos might become one of the bridges between our separate worlds. The mortgage leverage had opened a door that had been gradually closing for years. The honest conversation that followed had kept it from slamming shut again. Now we would see if the fragile understanding we'd reached could withstand the inevitable challenges ahead. The first time Liam came home overtired from an evening with me, the first disagreement about a school event, the first real test of our newly established boundaries, I was cautiously optimistic, but watchful. Trust, once damaged, requires time and consistency to rebuild. We had taken the first steps toward healing, but the journey ahead remained uncertain. For now, it was enough to know that on Wednesday, Liam would be sitting at my table again, sharing his day, strengthening the bond that Vanessa had sought to contain but could not sever. For now, it was enough to have a path forward, however tentative. For now, it was enough to know that I was still, undeniably, irreplaceably, his gamma. The Wednesday dinner arrangement began smoothly enough. I prepared simple meals that aligned with Vanessa's nutritional preferences, grilled chicken instead of fried, vegetables without the alien tentacle presentation, whole grain pasta rather than the white variety Liam preferred. I maintained his regular bedtime routine on overnight visits, limiting sweets to a single small dessert after a balanced meal. In short, I compromised. I adapted. I followed the rules established by his parents while still creating special moments that were uniquely ours. Stargazing sessions with his telescope on clear nights, nature collections displayed in shadow boxes, books about space and science. Read in the special corner of my living room we designated Command Central. For 2 months, the fragile peace held. Vanessa relaxed enough to allow occasional spontaneous visits when Elliott was working late and she had client appointments. I was invited to Liam's spring concert at Brightwood Academy, where I sat in the row behind his parents rather than being excluded altogether. Progress of a sort, if not equality with Vanessa's parents, who occupied seats directly beside them. Then came the incident that threatened our tentative understanding. It began innocuously enough. During one of our Wednesday dinners, Liam mentioned his upcoming school field trip to the Natural History Museum. "We're going to see real dinosaur bones and meteorites and everything," he explained, eyes wide with anticipation. "Ms. Patterson says each kid needs a grown-up to come with them, a parent or a grandparent? I supplied, heart quickening at the possibility. "Yeah, that's the word." He nodded vigorously. "Mommy can't come 'cause she has important clients that day, and Daddy has a big meeting about his green buildings. But you could come, right, Gamma? You're my grandparent, the pre." Hopefulness in his voice was impossible to resist. "I would love to come with you, Starman. When is the field trip?" "Next Thursday. You get to ride on the bus with me and everything." His excitement was contagious, his certainty that I would be his designated adult heartwarming. "That sounds wonderful," I said carefully. "But we should check with your parents first to make sure that's their plan too." "They'll say yes," he declared confidently. "You're the only other grown-up in my family who isn't working that day." I made a mental note to text Elliott that evening after Liam went home to discuss the logistics and ensure we were all aligned. The field trip sounded like exactly the kind of meaningful involvement I'd been seeking, a chance to support Liam's education, to meet his teachers and classmates, to be publicly acknowledged as his grandmother in a setting that mattered to him. But when I mentioned it to Elliott later, his hesitation was immediate and concerning. "About that field trip," he began, his voice carrying the now familiar tone of discomfort that arose whenever he was caught between his wife's preferences and my desires. "Vanessa's actually arranged for her mother to take the day off work, to accompany Liam." My heart sank. "But Liam clearly thinks I'm going. He specifically mentioned that his parents are working that day." "I know, and I'm sorry about the confusion. There was a miscommunication somewhere. Vanessa made these arrangements last week." The familiar frustration rose within me. Without even asking if I was available, knowing that I have a standing relationship with Liam on Wednesdays, knowing how much I've wanted to be included in his school activities. Elliott sighed heavily. "Mom, please don't make this into another conflict. Barbara has already requested the day off, and Liam gets along well with her." "That's not the point," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "The point is that I was deliberately bypassed for an opportunity that should naturally have been offered to me first, given our agreement about more inclusion in Liam's activities." "I understand why you're upset," he acknowledged. "But this was scheduled before Liam brought it up with you. It wasn't a deliberate exclusion." But it was. I knew it with bone-deep certainty. This was Vanessa maintaining her control, ensuring that her mother remained the primary grandmother figure in Liam's school life, preserving the dynamic that had been established since his birth. "Elliott," I said carefully, "I've honored every aspect of our agreement. I've adjusted my cooking to meet Vanessa's nutritional standards. I've maintained consistent bedtimes and routines. I've been careful not to contradict or undermine your parenting decisions. I've even initiated the process to transfer your mortgage to Oakridge Federal Bank. All I've asked in return is to be meaningfully included in Liam's life." His silence spoke volumes. "Please, I continued. Talk to Vanessa. Explain how important this is to me, and how confusing it will be for Liam if I'm suddenly not the person accompanying him when he clearly expects me to be. I'll try, he promised, though without much conviction. But I can't guarantee anything. These arrangements have been made. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen, the familiar sense of exclusion washing over me. Just when I thought we were making progress, just when the boundaries had begun to seem reasonable rather than restrictive. This reminder that I remained secondary, an afterthought rather than an integral part of Liam's life. The next day, no call came from Elliott, nor the day after. On Friday evening, my phone finally rang, Vanessa's name appearing on the screen rather than my son's. I answered with measured politeness. Hello, Vanessa. Margaret. Her tone was equally controlled. Elliott mentioned you had some concerns about the museum field trip. I was surprised to learn that arrangements had been made for your mother to attend when Liam clearly expected me to accompany him, I confirmed, especially given our recent discussions about more inclusive involvement in his school activities. This was arranged weeks ago, she explained, her voice taking on the patient tone one might use with a slightly difficult client. Mom specifically took the day off work. It wouldn't be fair to change plans now. And it didn't occur to you to check my availability first? To consider that I might want to participate in this important event in Liam's education? A brief silence. Frankly, no. Mom has always been our go-to for school functions when we're unavailable. She knows Liam's teachers, his classmates, the school protocols. It seemed the natural choice. Natural because you've established it that way, I pointed out. Because you've consistently positioned your parents as the primary grandparents in Liam's life, particularly in public settings. Her sigh was audible. Margaret, we've been through this. We're trying to build a more balanced relationship, but that doesn't mean everything changes overnight. Mom has been involved with Brightwood since Liam started there. She volunteers in his classroom twice a month. This isn't about excluding you, it's about consistency for Liam. The familiar justification, always about Liam's needs, never an acknowledgement of the deliberate choices that had created this imbalance in the first place. I see, I said, not bothering to hide the disappointment in my voice. And what am I supposed to tell Liam when he asks why I'm not coming as he expects? We've already explained to him that there was a misunderstanding, and Grandma Collins will be accompanying him as planned. Her tone suggested the matter was closed, the decision final. I took a deep breath, considering my response carefully. The old pattern would have been acquiescence, accepting the exclusion, swallowing my hurt, maintaining peace at the cost of my relationship with my grandson. The mortgage leverage approach had been the opposite extreme, using financial power to force my way into spaces where I'd been deliberately excluded. Neither felt right anymore. This isn't acceptable, Vanessa, I said finally. We had an agreement about meaningful inclusion in Liam's activities. This field trip is exactly the kind of event that should include me, especially when Liam himself expected and wanted me there. What exactly are you saying? Her voice had taken on an edge of wariness. I'm saying that I've upheld every aspect of our agreement, adjusted my behaviors, maintained your routines, respected your parenting decisions. But this pattern of positioning your parents as the real grandparents while I remain on the periphery needs to stop. I'm not asking to replace your mother, I'm asking for equal consideration. And if we don't change the field trip plans? The challenge in her tone was unmistakable. Then we'll need to reconsider our entire arrangement, I replied steadily. Because a one-sided compromise isn't a compromise at all. The threat hung between us, not the financial leverage of the mortgage inspection, but something more fundamental. A line drawn, a stand taken on the principle that had driven this conflict from the beginning. My right to be acknowledged and included as Liam's grandmother in ways that mattered. I'll discuss it with Elliott, she said finally. But I'm not making any promises. Mom has already arranged her schedule around this commitment. After we hung up, I paced my living room, second-guessing my approach. Had I been too confrontational? Should I have accepted the situation to maintain the fragile peace? Was I risking the modest gains we'd made over the past 2 months for a single field trip? But it wasn't just about the field trip. It was about the pattern it represented. The continued positioning of Vanessa's parents as the primary grandparents. The automatic assumption that they would fill the role I desperately wanted to occupy in Liam's life. It was about challenging a dynamic that had been established over 5 years, one that would only become more entrenched if left unchallenged. The next morning, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I opened it, Elliott stood on my porch, his expression a mixture of determination and discomfort. Behind him, strapped into his car seat in the driveway, Liam waved excitedly through the window. "Mom," Elliott said without preamble, "we need to talk about this field trip situation." I stepped back to let Elliott enter, glancing past him to where Liam was waiting in the car. "Shouldn't we have this conversation when Liam isn't within earshot?" "He's watching his space documentary on the tablet with headphones," Elliott assured me. "And honestly, Mom, this needs to be resolved today. We can't keep having the same conflict in different forms." His directness surprised me. Elliott had always been the peacekeeper, the mediator, carefully balancing between his wife's boundaries and his mother's desires. This more assertive approach was unexpected, but not unwelcome. "I agree," I said, leading him to the living room. "The field trip is just a symptom of a deeper issue that we haven't fully addressed." Elliott ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of stress I'd known since he was a teenager wrestling with complex architectural drawings. "Vanessa and I had a long conversation last night about the field trip, about our agreement with you, about how we're handling this 3-generation dynamic." I sat on the edge of my armchair, cautiously hopeful at his tone. "And you're right about the imbalance," he acknowledged. "Not intentionally, maybe, but there's definitely been a pattern of defaulting to Vanessa's parents for school functions and public events, while your time with Liam has been more private, more contained. The validation was unexpectedly emotional. After years of feeling like the outsider looking in, having my perception confirmed by my son nearly brought tears to my eyes." "Thank you for seeing that," I said quietly. Elliott nodded, his expression serious. "But Mom, you need to understand something about Vanessa. Her relationship with her own mother is complicated. There's a lot of expectation there, a lot of pressure to follow certain patterns, to include them in specific ways. I considered this new information. I'd always viewed Barbara and Richard Collins as the favored grandparents, the ones granted automatic access and authority in Liam's life. I hadn't considered that Vanessa might be responding to pressures of her own, rather than simply excluding me. Barbara has very definite ideas about family hierarchy and her role as grandmother," Elliott continued. "She was heavily involved in Vanessa's childhood, watched Vanessa's siblings' children regularly, and expected the same level of centrality with Liam. When Vanessa tries to establish more balance, there are phone calls, subtle guilt trips, reminders of all Barbara has done and continues to do for the family. I had no idea," I admitted. "I assumed Vanessa was simply prioritizing her parents over me." "It's not that simple. Vanessa feels caught between Barbara's expectations and your desires, much the same way I feel caught between you and Vanessa." He offered a tired smile. "It's generational quicksand all around." This perspective shift was illuminating. I'd been viewing our conflict as a straightforward power struggle between Vanessa and me, never considering that she might be navigating complex family dynamics of her own. "So where does that leave us with the field trip?" I asked. Elliott straightened his shoulders. "That's why I'm here. We have a proposal, one that addresses the immediate issue and the underlying imbalance." "I'm listening." "For this field trip, we'd like both you and Barbara to attend." I blinked in surprise. "Both of us? Is that even allowed by the school?" I called Ms. Patterson this morning. Each child needs one designated adult, but siblings often have both parents attend, splitting the supervision duties. There's no reason grandparents can't do the same. You'd be Liam's official chaperone on the school forms, but Barbara would join the group as well. It wasn't the exclusive grandmother role I'd envisioned, but it was a public acknowledgement of my importance in Liam's life, something that had been notably absent before. And beyond this field trip, I pressed. A more equitable division of school and public events moving forward, Elliott said. We've started creating an actual calendar for the next 3 months, alternating which grandparent takes which function when we can't attend. Some events might include all grandparents, others might be just you or just the Collins, but the overall balance would be more equal. Vanessa has agreed to this? Willingly? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. Elliott's expression softened. It wasn't easy. She had a difficult conversation with her mother last night after speaking with you. But yes, she's committed to creating more balance. She recognizes that the current arrangement isn't fair, even if it wasn't intentionally designed to exclude you. I took a moment to absorb this development. After years of feeling like an outsider, of watching Vanessa's parents occupy the role I desperately wanted in Liam's life, this represented a significant shift. Not total victory, but meaningful progress. And what about Barbara? How does she feel about sharing the field trip? Elliott grimaced slightly. She's adjusting to the idea. It helps that she and Liam have a special project they've been working on about dinosaurs that they can continue at the museum. The point is creating space where both grandmothers can have meaningful involvement without diminishing either relationship. Through the window, I could see Liam in the car, headphones on, completely absorbed in his documentary. This wasn't just about me or Vanessa or Barbara. It was about him, about ensuring he had rich, loving relationships with all his family members. I accept, I said finally, both the field trip arrangement and the broader calendar approach. But this needs to be a genuine commitment, Elliott, not something that fades after a few weeks or gets overridden when it's inconvenient. It will be, he assured me. In fact, he pulled out his phone and opened a digital calendar. We've already started mapping out events through summer. Liam's end-of-year presentation at school next month. You'll be the designated grandparent. The summer science camp showcase in July, also you. His swimming lessons in June. The Collins will handle those since they're at their community pool. The level of detail, the concrete planning rather than vague promises, was reassuring. This wasn't just lip service. They had actually begun implementing a more balanced approach. Does Liam know about this change for the field trip? I asked. Elliott nodded. We explained it this morning. He's thrilled to have both his grandmothers along, thinks it makes him extra special compared to his classmates. I smiled at that. Leave it to Liam to see having multiple grandparents at a school function as a status symbol rather than the result of complicated adult negotiations. There's one more thing, Elliott added, his expression turning serious again. Vanessa would like to speak with you directly about this, not just about the field trip arrangements, but about the broader family dynamic. She suggested lunch tomorrow, just the two of you. This was unexpected. Vanessa and I had rarely spent time together. Without Elliott or Liam as buffers, direct conversation about our complicated relationship would be challenging but potentially transformative. I'd welcome that, I said carefully. A frank discussion is long overdue. Elliott visibly relaxed. Thank you, Mom, for being willing to try a new approach, for not digging in your heels about being the only grandparent at the field trip, for seeing that this is a step toward something better. I just want to be Liam's grandmother, I said simply. In all the ways that matter, not just when it's convenient. I know. He reached over and squeezed my hand. And after yesterday, Vanessa knows that too. Your willingness to take a stand, without using financial leverage this time, made her realize how important this is to you and how unsustainable the current imbalance has become. A honk from outside interrupted our conversation. Liam had apparently finished his documentary and was ready for whatever adventure his father had promised as a reward for patience. "We should go," Elliott said, standing. "We promised Liam pancakes at Stellar Diner after I ran my quick errand. But we'll see you Thursday for the field trip. Ms. Patterson said to be at the school by 8:30. Vanessa will text you the details." As I walked them to the door, Liam waved enthusiastically from his car seat, pulling off his headphones to call out, "Bye, Gamma. See you on Museum Day." "See you on Museum Day, Starman," I called back, my heart lighter than it had been in years. After they drove away, I stood on my porch for a long moment, processing the unexpected turn of events. The field trip conflict that I'd feared would unravel our fragile peace had instead catalyzed a more honest conversation and concrete change. For the first time since Liam was born, I felt like a true grandparent rather than an occasional visitor in his life. Acknowledged, included, valued. Not just by my grandson, who had always welcomed me with open arms, but by his parents, who were finally creating space for me in the public aspects of his world. The lunch with Vanessa tomorrow would be challenging. We had 5 years of accumulated tensions and misunderstandings to address, 5 years of competing for position in Liam's life rather than collaborating to enrich it. But the fact that she had suggested the meeting, that she was willing to have direct conversation without Elliott as mediator, suggested a readiness for change that hadn't been present before. I picked up my phone and sent a brief text to Elliott. "Thank you for coming today. Looking forward to Museum Day with Liam." His response came quickly. "He's already planning which space exhibits to show you after the dinosaurs. And Mom, this is going to work. We're all committed to making it work." I believed him. For the first time in years, I truly believed that we might find a way forward that honored all the relationships in Liam's life without diminishing any of them. It wouldn't be perfect. There would be adjustments, compromises, moments of tension as we established new patterns. But the foundation for something healthier was finally being laid, and it had started with a mortgage inspection on a birthday, my desperate, imperfect attempt to maintain connection with the grandson I adored. Not my proudest moment, perhaps, but the catalyst that had ultimately forced us all to confront the unsustainable dynamic we'd created. Sometimes leverage comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes the breaking point is exactly what's needed to begin rebuilding something stronger. The Coastal Cafe occupied a prime corner location overlooking Oakridge Harbor, its large windows framing the marina where sailboats bobbed gently in. The spring breeze. I arrived 15 minutes early for my lunch with Vanessa, selecting a quiet table by the window that offered both privacy for our conversation and a pleasant view to ease potential awkward moments. When Vanessa walked in precisely at noon, I was struck by how rarely I'd seen her without either Elliott or Liam as buffers. She navigated the restaurant with the confident grace that had first impressed me years ago when Elliott brought her home. Perfectly tailored blazer, elegant but sensible heels, auburn hair swept into a polished chignon. The consummate professional entering a business negotiation. Because that's what this was in many ways. A negotiation of boundaries, expectations, and roles that would shape our family dynamics for years to come. "Margaret," she greeted me with a small, careful smile. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "Thank you for suggesting it," I replied, standing briefly as she took the seat across from me. "This conversation is long overdue." We ordered salads for both of us, iced tea for her, sparkling water for me, and exchanged the expected pleasantries about weather and traffic until our server departed. Then, somewhat to my surprise, Vanessa took the initiative. "I owe you an apology," she said, smoothing her napkin across her lap with precise movements. "Not just for the field trip situation, but for the pattern it represents. The directness caught me off guard. I'd prepared for defensiveness, for careful diplomatic phrasing, not for an outright acknowledgement of the issue. Elliott helped me see how systematically you've been sidelined. she continued when I didn't immediately respond. It wasn't entirely conscious or deliberate, but that doesn't change the impact it's had on your relationship with Liam. I took a measured sip of my water, considering my response. I appreciate your honesty. I've felt increasingly marginalized in Liam's life, particularly in public settings and milestone events. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. Elliott said something yesterday that really made me reflect. He asked how I would feel if my mother were treated the way you've been, invited to separate secondary celebrations rather than primary ones, excluded from school events, supervised during interactions with Liam. And? I prompted when she paused. I'd be furious, she admitted. I'd fight it every step of the way. Yet somehow I expected you to accept similar treatment without complaint. Her insight and candor were disarming. I'd anticipated a more defensive posture, perhaps grudging concessions rather than this level of self-awareness. May I ask what changed? I inquired. Beyond Elliott's perspective? Vanessa glanced out at the harbor, gathering her thoughts. Two things, really. First, watching Liam's genuine disappointment when he realized you wouldn't be at his field trip. He has a relationship with you that's separate from what Elliott and I might orchestrate or manage. That's his right as an individual, even at 5. Nodded, warmth spreading through my chest at the acknowledgement of my bond with Liam. Second, the conversation I had with my mother after you and I spoke on the phone. Her expression tightened slightly. When I called to explain that you would be joining us for the museum trip, her reaction was illuminating. In what way? I asked, genuinely curious about the dynamic Elliott had hinted at. She was instantly threatened, suggested I was diminishing her importance in Liam's life, questioned whether I valued everything she's done for our family. Vanessa shook her head. It was as if sharing a single event with you somehow erased her entire relationship with Liam. Our salads arrived, providing a brief reprieve from the intensity of the conversation. When the server departed again, Vanessa continued. Her reaction made me wonder if that's how you felt all these years, as if your role as Liam's grandmother was constantly under threat, requiring vigilant protection. The parallel hadn't occurred to me, but it resonated deeply. Yes, I acknowledged. That's exactly it. Every canceled visit, every rescheduled dinner, every school event I learned about after the fact felt like another piece of my relationship with Liam being chipped away. I never intended that, she said softly. I was responding to my own family, patterns, my mother's expectations, my desire to please her while establishing my own approach to parenting. You became collateral damage in that process. The frank acknowledgement was more healing than I'd anticipated, not because it erased the hurt of the past 5 years, but because it validated my experience rather than dismissing it as oversensitivity or exaggeration. Where do we go from here? I asked, focusing on the future rather than dwelling on past grievances. The calendar system Elliott showed you is a start. Concrete plans for more equitable involvement in Liam's activities. But I think we need something more fundamental. She met my gaze directly. A reset in how we view our roles in relation to each other. What do you have in mind? I've been thinking about what you said months ago, about Liam having different experiences with different people in his life. You were right. She set down her fork, giving me her full attention. Children benefit from various influences, perspectives, relationships. Your approach doesn't have to mirror mine to be valuable to Liam. This was the crux of the matter. The recognition that different didn't mean wrong, that Liam could navigate varying expectations and environments as part of his development. I'd like to propose a new understanding, Vanessa continued. One where we acknowledge each other as equally important figures in Liam's life, with different but complementary gifts to offer him. I would welcome that, I said sincerely. I've never wanted to undermine your authority as his mother or compete with your parents. I've only wanted to be fully included as his grandmother. She nodded, a genuine smile softening her features. I know that now, and I'm committed to making that happen, not just with the field trip or the events calendar, but in our overall family dynamic. As we continued our lunch, the conversation flowed more naturally than I could have imagined. We discussed practical arrangements for the museum trip, laughed about Liam's current obsession with space phenomena, and even found common ground in our shared frustration with Brightwood Academy's excessive homework policies for young children. By the time we finished our meal, something had fundamentally shifted between us. Not friendship exactly. We were too different in personality and perspective for that, but mutual respect and a shared commitment to Liam's well-being that transcended our past conflicts. "I have a suggestion for after the museum field trip," Vanessa said as we waited for the check. "What if Liam stays overnight with you? He's been asking to use the telescope again, and Thursday night is supposed to be clear. It would give you special time with him after sharing the day with Barbara." The offer, spontaneous, generous, unprecedented, took my breath away. "I'd love that," I managed, emotion making my voice slightly unsteady. "Are you sure?" "I am," she affirmed. "It's time Liam's relationship with you was supported rather than managed." 2 days later, I stood beside Barbara Collins at the entrance to Brightwood Academy, watching yellow school buses pull into the circular driveway. We had arrived separately, but at the same time, exchanging civil greetings as we checked in at the front office and received our visitor badges. Barbara was much as I'd imagined from Vanessa's descriptions, immaculately dressed in expensive casual wear, her silver-streaked hair styled in a fashionable bob, her manner briskly efficient. She eyed me with barely disguised wariness, clearly adjusting to the new arrangement with about as much enthusiasm as I'd initially felt. "Vanessa mentioned you'll be keeping Liam overnight after the field trip," she remarked as we waited for the children to be brought to the assembly area. "Yes," I confirmed. "He wants to use his telescope. The weather should be perfect for stargazing." She nodded stiffly. "He's very excited about that telescope. It's all he talked about at Sunday dinner last week." The comment might have been interpreted as criticism of an excessive gift in the past, but I chose to receive it differently now. He has a genuine interest in astronomy. It's wonderful to nurture that curiosity at his age. Before she could respond, the doors burst open and a stream of kindergartners flooded the assembly area, Liam's distinctive auburn hair visible among them. When he spotted us, his face lit with surprised delight. "Gamma and Grandma Collins!" he exclaimed, rushing toward us. "You're both here!" "We sure are, Starman," I confirmed, kneeling to receive his enthusiastic hug. "Double grandmas means double. Fun at the museum," he declared with the perfect logic of a 5-year-old, reaching for both our hands as Ms. Patterson began organizing the class into groups. As we boarded the bus, Liam insisting on sitting between us in a seat designed for 2 smaller bodies, I caught Barbara's eye over his head. Her expression softened momentarily, a flash of understanding passing between us. Whatever our differences, whatever complex family dynamics had brought us to this point, we shared one important truth. We both adored this bright-eyed boy who saw no contradiction in loving both his grandmothers fully and simultaneously. The museum trip unfolded with unexpected harmony. Barbara's knowledge of dinosaurs complemented my enthusiasm for the space exhibits. Liam proudly introduced us to his classmates and teachers, clearly enjoying his status as the child with 2 grandmothers in attendance. We took turns supervising lunch, managing bathroom breaks, and helping with the educational scavenger hunt Ms. Patterson had organized. By late afternoon, as we prepared to board the buses back to school, even Barbara seemed to have relaxed her guard slightly. "You're good with him," she acknowledged as we watched Liam excitedly comparing fossil findings with a classmate. "He clearly adores you." "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched by the concession. "He's equally attached to you. The dinosaur project you've been working on together is impressive." She nodded, a hint of pride in her expression. "He has a remarkable memory for scientific terms. Gets that from Elliott, I think. And his creativity comes straight from Vanessa, I added, the shared appreciation of our grandson's qualities creating momentary common ground. That evening, after Barbara had said her goodbyes at the school and I had taken Liam home for our telescope adventure, I stood in my backyard watching him carefully adjust the instrument's focus toward the emerging stars. His face was a picture of concentration, his small hands steady as he applied the knowledge gained from the instruction manual we'd studied together. "Gamma, I can see it! I can see Jupiter!" he gasped, his excitement palpable in the gathering. Darkness. "It has stripes, just like in my book." I leaned down to take my turn at the eyepiece, marveling at the clear view of the gas giant with its distinctive bands. "It's beautiful, isn't it? And those tiny dots nearby are some of Jupiter's moons, real moons," he breathed, reclaiming the telescope. "Someday I'm going to visit them all." "I believe you will, Starman," I told him, meaning it completely. As we continued our celestial exploration, pointing the telescope toward different quadrants of the night sky, I felt a profound sense of rightness settle over me. This moment, this simple, perfect connection with my grandson, was what I had been fighting for all along. Not control, not position, but the freedom to create memories together, to nurture his curiosity, to be a meaningful presence in his life. The mortgage I held on their home had given me the leverage to crack open a door that had been gradually closing for years. But it was honest communication, willingness to compromise, and our shared love for Liam that had truly transformed our family dynamic. Later, as I tucked an exhausted but happy Liam into the bed in what he now called his space room at my house, he asked sleepily, "Gamma, are you and Mommy and Grandma Collins all friends now?" I smoothed his auburn hair back from his forehead, considering my answer carefully. "We're learning to be better friends," I told him honestly. "Because we all love you so very much." He nodded, satisfied with this explanation. "That's good, 'cause I have enough love for everybody. You don't have to share it like cookies." From the mouths of babes, indeed, he had articulated the fundamental truth that had eluded us adults for too long. Love isn't a finite resource to be divided and allocated. It expands to encompass all the important relationships in our lives, enriching rather than diminishing each connection. "You're absolutely right, Starman," I whispered, kissing his forehead as his eyelids drooped. "Love isn't like cookies at all." As I closed his door, leaving it cracked just the right amount to let in a sliver of hallway light, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From the excluded grandmother desperately using mortgage leverage to gain access to her grandson's birthday, to this peaceful evening of shared wonder and connection. There would be challenges ahead, adjustments to our new understanding, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. Barbara would likely continue to struggle with the more balanced arrangement. Elliott would occasionally find himself mediating between the strong women in his life, and Vanessa and I would need to communicate directly rather than through my son. But the foundation had been laid for something healthier, more sustainable, a family system that acknowledged all connections as valuable, that created space for different relationships to flourish without competition or constraint. Sometimes leverage comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes the very thing you think might destroy a relationship becomes the catalyst for its transformation. And sometimes, when you're willing to stand firm for what matters most, you discover that others have been seeking the same resolution all along, just through different paths. As I checked my phone before bed, I found a text from Vanessa. "Hope, the stargazing went well. Liam's overnight bag has his favorite breakfast cereal in the side pocket. Thank you for giving him this special time." I smiled as I typed my response. Jupiter was magnificent. He's sleeping soundly now, dreaming of moons and planets. "See you tomorrow afternoon." Her reply came quickly. "No rush. Enjoy your morning together. We're all exactly where we should be." And we were. finally, we were. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.